My boss fired me after I refused to falsify the quarterly reports. "You're too naive for the real business world," he sneered. "Maybe accounting isn't for you." I packed my desk quietly and made copies of everything before I left. That was a Friday. The office was quiet. Just the ticking of the clock and the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. I was still numb, barely hearing the buzz of my phone in my purse. I didn't answer. What was there to say? After 7 years of doing everything by the book, of staying late, fixing everyone's mistakes, and being the one person people knew they could count on, I was shown the door for refusing to commit fraud. My name is Natalie Serrano, and I never thought saying no would cost me everything. Jerry Carlton, the CFO, didn't even blink as he slid the papers across the table. "Just smooth over the numbers. It's what the last 2 senior accountants did. You don't want to be the only one who can't play ball, do you?" I did want to be the only one. The only honest one, anyway. I had a feeling something was off when the numbers from the inventory and operations budgets didn't match what was being presented to the board. At first, I thought it was just sloppy reporting, but the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. The quarterly reports were doctored to inflate performance, cover losses, and hide some very suspicious miscellaneous expenses. Expenses that led directly to Jerry's private consultancy firm. When I confronted him, he didn't argue. He laughed. "You think you're some kind of whistleblower, please? I've seen interns with more spine." He fired me on the spot. No severance, no exit interview. Just a smirk and a security escort to the door. What he didn't know was that while I was packing up my desk, I wasn't just grabbing my things. I was securing my leverage. I had emails, spreadsheets, receipts, and internal memos. Every breadcrumb he left behind in his arrogance, I gathered. Not because I wanted revenge, not yet anyway, but because I knew I'd need protection. Because men like Jerry don't just let people walk away after saying no. Over the weekend, I didn't cry. I didn't rant. I didn't even tell my parents what had happened. Instead, I opened up an old external hard drive, the same one I used back when I was tutoring forensic accounting in college. It still had my audit templates, flagging algorithms, and my thesis on internal fraud detection. I poured myself some tea, rolled up my sleeves, and got to work. You see, what Jerry never understood, what no one at the company ever bothered to ask, was that I wasn't just another accountant. I had a very particular interest in corporate fraud. I'd studied it, obsessed over it. Spent 2 years interning for a forensic audit firm that specialized in financial crimes. But I'd never bragged about it. I didn't think I needed to. My quiet strength was always data. Patterns, inconsistencies, trails that arrogant people thought they'd hidden. The problem with people like Jerry is that they think fraud is just about faking numbers. They forget that real fraud leaves footprints. Tiny, nearly invisible at first, but traceable for someone patient enough to follow them. So I started mapping out the inconsistencies between the internal financials I'd seen and the external reports. I matched account numbers from vendor payments to companies that didn't exist 6 months ago. I found inflated invoices and asset write-downs that just disappeared. And I wasn't working alone, not entirely. Years ago, I helped out a former classmate who now works for the state's Office of Financial Compliance. I never asked for a favor before, but when I sent her a message with the subject line, "I think a Fortune 500 company is hiding a $12 million black hole," she replied in 4 minutes flat. "Are you sure?" she wrote. "Give me 2 days," I replied. I wasn't sure what my endgame was yet. I just knew I wasn't letting Jerry get away with this. Still, I had to be careful. Very careful. I hadn't signed any NDA, but I knew the company would come after me the moment they got wind that I was investigating anything. So I kept my files encrypted. I worked offline. I even used my neighbor's Wi-Fi. I wasn't taking chances, not when I knew what was at stake. But I also started asking myself a different question. How deep did this go? If Jerry had been falsifying numbers, who else knew? Who else had signed off? The CEO? The board? Or was this all Jerry's show? I didn't know it yet, but I was standing on the edge of something much bigger than one corrupt CFO. Something that could take down more than just a few careers. And Monday morning was coming. Monday morning came, but not for me. I didn't go to the office. I wasn't employed there anymore. But Jerry Carlton did. So did the CEO, the board, the investors, and the auditors, all walking into a building I now knew was a house of cards. What none of them realized was that I'd already shared a small slice of the data with my contact at the Office of Financial Compliance. Just enough to get their forensic team curious. Just enough to make sure I wasn't standing alone if someone tried to silence me. I had protected myself first. Because when you challenge someone like Jerry, the first thing they do is try to discredit you. And right on cue, that morning I got an email from a law firm, an aggressive, high-priced one representing my former employer. You are in violation of proprietary confidentiality. Cease and desist all actions regarding corporate data you may have wrongfully retained. I smiled. They thought they could intimidate me with legal threats. What they didn't realize was that the moment I received that email, they confirmed they were nervous. They knew I had something valuable, and I hadn't even gone public yet. But this wasn't about revenge. Not entirely. I started to wonder how many people were affected by Jerry's manipulation. How many employees were passed up for raises because budget was tight? How many investors were lied to? How many vendors were strong-armed or scapegoated? How many interns, just like I had once been, were told to shut up and file away fraud? And the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Because it wasn't just Jerry. It was a system built to reward people like him. A system that called people like me naive. So I went deeper. I traced falsified equipment purchases to a shell company registered under a fake name. Except it wasn't fake. It was Jerry's brother-in-law. I found a cycle of paper transactions bouncing between subsidiaries that had no employees. Even the company's philanthropy fund, supposedly donating to local schools, had funneled $600,000 into a consulting initiative that existed only on paper. But here's what really turned the tide: an internal email chain I remembered seeing by accident months ago. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, I realized it was the smoking gun. It was a conversation between Jerry, the CEO, and two board members, discussing how to keep the numbers clean until after the next investor call. A call that was now 5 days away. 5 days until they'd present falsified earnings to investors. 5 days until SEC laws would be knowingly violated. 5 days until they committed federal crimes in front of cameras and shareholders. I didn't want to stop them. I wanted them to go through with it. On the record. I wanted witnesses. I wanted proof. And I was going to give them exactly enough rope to hang themselves. By Tuesday morning, I had a plan, and it was surgical. The first step was to give the truth just enough sunlight to make it undeniable. I packaged a confidential, fully sourced report. Spreadsheets, emails, shell company registrations, and expense breakdowns. I labeled it Internal Irregularities, Confidential Evidence of Financial Misrepresentation, submitted by former senior accountant Natalie Serrano. But I didn't send it to the media. Not yet. Instead, I sent 3 sealed envelopes. The first went to the Office of Financial Compliance, addressed directly to my contact with a note, "Per our conversation. This is real. Move fast." The second went to the external auditors set to review the company's books before the investor meeting. I knew they'd received sanitized files. Mine were the originals. The third, it went to the company's largest independent shareholder, a hedge fund manager known for his ruthless integrity. I'd done my homework. He'd once pulled out of a 9-figure deal because of an accounting gray area. If anyone would go nuclear when they saw what was happening, it would be him. I didn't sign that letter. Meanwhile, I set up a secure cloud drive with all the documents, tracked by red receipts. If anyone tried to bury the evidence, I'd know. If they tried to spin it, I'd release it all. And then, I waited. 2 days later, Jerry started calling. Blocked number, no voicemail, just calls. Over and over. Then came the texts. Natalie, can we talk? This is a misunderstanding. We can fix this, just tell me what you want. I didn't respond. Because the one thing I wanted, the one thing they could never give me, was trust. Trust isn't restored by negotiation, it's restored by consequences. On Thursday, a reporter I'd quietly met with over coffee, an investigative journalist known for exposing white-collar crime, texted me, hearing whispers from inside the firm. SEC might be watching the Friday call. You were right to wait. Yes, that call. The investor earnings call, where the CEO and CFO would present their polished lies. But this time, they wouldn't just be pitching numbers, they'd be perjuring themselves in front of regulators, analysts, and their largest stakeholders. And I'd made sure the right people were listening. I had no idea how public it would get. I wasn't aiming for headlines, I just wanted justice, quiet, thorough, and inescapable. But some storms can't be quieted once they start to build. By Friday morning, Jerry was visibly sweating before the webcast. I wasn't in the office, but I had contacts on the inside. People who didn't approve of what was happening, but were too afraid to speak out before. Now, they were sending updates. He just took a call and locked his door. Compliance officers are in the building. Someone from the SEC just arrived. I opened my laptop, watched the live feed, and waited for the lies to begin, on the record, under pressure, in front of the world. Friday morning, 9:59 a.m. The webcast was set to begin at 10 sharp. I sat on my couch, laptop open, tea going cold beside me. My heart wasn't racing, but it was steady, focused, like I'd trained for this moment my whole life. On screen, the company's quarterly earnings meeting opened just like the 100 before it. Upbeat music, the company logo, and a confident male voice announcing record growth and strong forward momentum. Then the camera cut to Jerry Carlton. He looked different. The usual smugness was there, sure, but it sat uneasily beneath a thin sheen of sweat. His collar was a little too tight, his smile too rehearsed. He knew. He knew he was standing in front of a minefield, and he didn't know which step would trigger the blast. Good morning, everyone, Jerry began. We're pleased to report another strong quarter, with year-over-year earnings growth of 13.4%, driven by Ping. An SEC investigator in the back of the room raised a hand. This part wasn't public, but I got the blow-by-blow in real time through a message from Elena, an assistant in investor relations who'd always been kind to me. They just paused the meeting. SEC guy is asking about a shell company discrepancy. Jerry looks like he's going to be sick. Live, the video feed cut to a placeholder graphic. Brief technical pause. Please stand by. It didn't return for 28 minutes. When it did, the CEO, not Jerry, was front and center. Face tight, voice flat. There appears to be a discrepancy in some of the reporting figures submitted in advance of this call. We are currently cooperating with regulatory officials and will be postponing this earnings report until a full internal review is complete. Click. That was it. No fireworks, no confessions, no courtroom dramatics, just a controlled implosion. Silent but devastating. But that wasn't the end. Oh no. An hour later, the hedge fund manager I'd sent my anonymous envelope to posted a statement on LinkedIn. Our firm is suspending investment in company name pending internal ethics review and forensic audit. We have reason to believe material misrepresentation occurred. Then came the headlines. SEC investigates accounting irregularities at Fortune 500 firm. CFO's past tied to suspicious private entities. Whistleblower evidence triggers federal oversight. And by 3:30 that afternoon, Jerry Carlton was no longer employed. He didn't get to clean out his desk. He didn't get a farewell party. He was escorted out just like I had been, except this time it was by federal agents. And me, I was sitting at home, phone buzzing, inbox full. Law firms, journalists, employees I hadn't spoken to in years. Some just wanted to thank me. Some wanted to hire me. Some, like the CEO, wanted to meet. But Jerry never called again. Because he knew. Whatever came next, he'd already lost. The fallout was swift, like a controlled demolition. First Jerry, then 2 board members quietly resigned, and within the week, the CEO himself stepped down, citing health reasons. But everyone knew. The silence said it louder than any statement could. And suddenly, people who once looked through me now saw me with entirely different eyes. I wasn't just Natalie Serrano, the junior accountant they'd underestimated. I was the woman who'd pulled the pin on a corporate grenade, methodically, precisely, and without ever raising her voice. It didn't take long for the press to dig deeper. A few persistent journalists traced the evidence back to a former internal accountant with specialized fraud expertise. One article even referred to me as a forensic savant. That made me laugh. No one had ever called me a savant before. Within 10 days, the company's stock had dropped by 38%. Shareholders filed a class action lawsuit. The Office of Financial Compliance launched a formal inquiry, and the SEC officially listed the case as active. I kept my head down during the noise, but I wasn't hiding, because something else happened, something I never expected. Job offers, big ones. Firms that had once brushed me off now scrambled to schedule interviews, investigative units, internal audit departments. Some of the biggest names in finance wanted me on their side now. But it was the call I got from one quiet, well-spoken woman at a public interest firm that changed everything. "I read your report," she said, "and I don't think this is the only company doing this. We'd like to fund a private investigative initiative. Quiet, legal, ethical, you'd lead it." She paused, then added, "You'd help people like you, who see things they're not supposed to and get punished for speaking up." I said yes, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted to build something that outlasted revenge. And for the first time, I understood something about myself. My strength was never just in numbers or details. My strength was in patience, in clarity, in knowing that truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to be undeniable when it finally arrives. And speaking of truth, 3 weeks after the collapse, I received a letter. Handwritten, no return address. It said, "You were right. I thought I could control it. I thought it would stay hidden. I'm sorry for what I did to you, and to everyone else. If it means anything, you were always better than me." I read it once. Then I fed it through my shredder, because I wasn't looking for closure from a man like Jerry Carlton. I already had closure. Justice didn't come with fireworks. It came in the form of quiet, relentless truth. And the truth was mine. 6 months passed, most people moved on, news cycles shifted, the firm was restructured under a new name, leadership changed, scandals faded into the background, and the public, hungry for the next outrage, forgot. But I didn't, because I was still building. The initiative I'd agreed to lead grew faster than anyone expected. We started with 2 accountants, a retired investigator, and a single case. Within weeks, we were tracking leads from employees at 6 different corporations, all with stories that started the same way. I saw something wrong, but when I tried to speak up, that sentence always ended in silence, fear, or termination. I knew that silence intimately. I had lived it, but now I gave those people a voice, not just with evidence and documents, but with strategy, with protection, with power. We called the project Clear Ledger, a nonprofit watchdog group for financial truth-tellers, and yes, we made sure it was legally bulletproof. And somewhere in the middle of all that growth, something else happened, something personal. I was invited back to my old company's building. Under new leadership, the board had formally apologized to every employee let go in the purge. They asked if I would come in, not as staff but as a speaker. to talk to their new ethics team, to tell my story. At first, I didn't want to, but then I remembered something. On my last day there, I packed up my desk quietly. No speeches, no outbursts, just silence and copies of everything. I left through the service elevator. The long way down. This time, I came in through the front. I walked past the marble reception desk and the glass-paneled offices, where people used to glance away when I walked by. But now, they looked up. Some even smiled. Some nodded. I stood in the same conference room where Jerry once condescended to me in front of the CFO. I looked at the people gathered, and I told them exactly what had happened. I didn't exaggerate, I didn't dramatize. I told the truth. Clearly, simply, and without apology. At the end, someone asked, "What would you tell someone who sees something wrong and is scared to come forward?" I paused, then I said, "You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to be right. And you have to be patient. The truth always takes its time, but when it lands, it never leaves." There was silence, then applause. Later, as I walked back toward the elevator, someone tapped my shoulder. A young woman, maybe 22, whispered, "I'm in accounting too. Thank you. You made me feel less alone." That was it. That was the moment. Not the headlines, not the job offers, not even Jerry's pathetic letter. It was that quiet thank you, because the story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every person who had ever been told they were too naive, too soft, too quiet for the real world. Well, maybe we are quiet, but we're still here, and we don't forget.